Hey everybody, this is Ryan McClanahan with historythroughcards.com. I hope you're all doing very well today. Back in 2022, I was at the National in Atlantic City and I came across a dealer that had nothing but cricket and soccer cards from Great Britain. And I saw this particular card there. This is a 1908 Odgins Famous Footballers. Let me see if I can. There we go. This is Billy Meredith. And I'll show you the back of this card, just in case you guys haven't seen it. It looks like this. So what's really interesting about this is the price tag. Now, I had never heard of Billy Meredith before, and the thing is, you can't know everybody and see every card, which is great. It's one of the reasons that keeps me in the hobby is that I haven't seen everything yet, and I don't know all the players, especially the players from the last 25 years, because I I stopped collecting modern back in 1994, so I really haven't caught up on my modern players and modern cards. So I'm obviously into vintage, but I didn't know anything about this guy, and it was kind of funny because there was a huge crowd around this dealer's table, and he had everything. It was really cool to see. I mean, the thing is, like, you don't really see this stuff at shows. At least I haven't. In the last couple of years or so, you're starting to see more and more British cards trickle into the American hobby, which I think is cool. But at the same time, you have to have a informed collector base that actually knows about these cards and wants to collect them. And another one of the drawbacks, I think, about collecting cards like this is that when they do come through the mail, collectors in England and France and Australia and the Netherlands and Germany, or wherever you're collecting these cards or getting these cards from, it isn't like they're being wrapped uh, appropriately or shipped appropriately for America and collectors. I don't think that a lot of these dealers overseas understand the value that these cards are being placed here in the States, because a lot of times they're just not found here or in any plentiful numbers, especially when you consider that some of these cards, like this, are well over 100 years old, and it's not like British cards from like the 1930s where there's just millions upon millions of them. That may not be the case for cards from like the 1890s or the early 1900s. Now, the funny thing about Billy Meredith here was his price tag, who was very expensive, and I did have him on my list after I left for the national. And the thing is, I recommend anyone going to a national at least once, because uh, if it's not there, it probably doesn't exist. I saw a lot of really interesting things at the national. I took a lot of photos. I met a lot of great people. It was a great experience overall. So that part I really enjoyed. The prices, on the other hand, oh my God. I don't know if they were inflated because it was the national, and that does happen quite a bit, to tell you the truth. A lot of times you'll be able to find these cards cheaper online, or maybe like overseas too. So you might want to keep that in mind. So I did have this on my want list, and I just searched like every week to try to find a copy of this card. It's it's expensive. It's still expensive, and the exchange rate between America and Great Britain or England, it's the British pound is well, it's pounding the American dollar. So you're going to pay a little bit more money for cards overseas, but that's where they are. So you really can't help that. This card I did find here in the States, which was kind of unusual, and it was expensive, but it was still doable. It didn't really break the bank. I wouldn't want to purchase this card again, though. I do know that Billy Meredith's cards are quite expensive, and it's one of the deal breakers, I think, for a lot of novice collectors and I am not a novice collector, but I am still a novice at knowing who the players are in soccer or football, which is more appropriate actually. The terminology football fits more than soccer does, if that makes sense. And it's also quite interesting too that soccer has, by worldwide, the most fans and 3.5 billion. And that's followed by cricket, which isn't all that far behind, and that is 2.5 billion. And then followed by basketball, which is 2.2 billion fans. And tennis has 1.3 billion, followed by, let's see, table tennis at 875 million fans. I don't play table tennis. I don't know anything about it. I don't even think there are cards of table tennis. Maybe there are, but I don't know because I don't collect it. But baseball is really interesting here because there are 535 million fans worldwide, and baseball is for the hobby the most expensive sport for the most part, especially when it comes to vintage. And then American football, which has 450 million fans. I would also say too that uh, foot, football or soccer is also on the cheaper side as well. I have found cards from like the 1930s from Great Britain that are really affordable, and this kind of shifts. So if you're a fan of say like 1930s soccer or football, you can grab complete sets fairly affordably. But that also changes through the 1960s. So if you're looking for a card of say Bobby Charlton here, and I'll get to him in another video, but this is a 1961. It's a Kellogg. I just picked this thing up, and I only really wanted this card, and the dealer sent me the entire set instead, and it was like 12 pounds. So, okay, fine, great. So I thought that was actually kind of expensive, and the thing is, it is going to be expensive to grab soccer cards from the 1960s. You have a lot of Barrett cards, Barrett famous footballers. I don't have any with me to show you guys, so they're not really cheap, and especially if you're getting into like George Best cards. The George Best is one of the great all-time soccer players, but and his rookie goes for about 5 grand or so, and so that's really expensive. If you want a George Best card, I'd probably suggest a 1984 Rothmans or something like that, and that's probably going to cost you like $60. And then you have Stanley Matthews from the 1930s, 40s, 50s, and he had a long career, as did Billy Meredith here. And I'm going to get to him in just a quick second. So Stanley Matthews does have a lot of cards from the 1930s and then 40s, and they're going to run you probably like maybe 20 or 30 bucks. Not bad, not bad. But when it comes to Billy Meredith, he's considered the first superstar of soccer, so he is going to cost you. But you can get lucky. You just have to kind of be patient and see what comes your way. It's kind of like fishing, really, fishing for sports cards. So the funny thing I noticed about Billy Meredith here wasn't just the price tag because it is kind of steep, but I noticed that there aren't really any contemporary articles from the time he played, and he played from I believe 1892 to 1924, and then he really stops playing in like 1920, and then he continues as a senior for like 4 years. So he does have a number of cards. I don't know what his rookie card is. I've been told that this is his rookie. I don't know that for a fact, and I'm not going to tell you guys that this is definitely his rookie. Um, his cards can range anywhere between like a few $100s, 350 or so for a card like this, although I didn't pay that, up to maybe about 1,200, $1,300 for certain cards. And like I said before, the funny thing is about this period of time and the collecting establishment, if you will, because the hobby didn't exist when this card came out. Some manufacturers, their cards are extremely rare at this point in time, and it's not like the 1930s where you have millions upon millions of cards in Great Britain. You do actually. So a lot of those cards are not they're not expensive. They're never going to break the bank, and they're all over the place. This is at a completely different time in the collecting establishment. I don't know what to call it other than that because the hobby didn't exist even in Great Britain until 1927. Um, so a lot of his cards are going to be more on the rarer side. I don't think that this card is all that rare. It's just expensive. That's all it is. And you don't really see it all that often. I have never seen this card prior to the National in 2022. And again, I didn't know who he was, and I wanted to find out more about it. And so uh, that's the one fun thing about the hobby. For me personally, is that I don't know what is out there. I don't know everything. I haven't seen everything, and and it's the one thing that keeps me in the hobby is that I want to see what else is out there. And so I found a few instances after, like well after he had passed away in 1958, that kind of like details his career, and I'm going to tell you about those. As I said, there's very few contemporary reports on his career during his time as a player, and I've found this to be the case for a lot of these early soccer players or football players at the time. So it's really hard to like trace their careers at the time and when they're playing. And it's only until they're passing that it'll be in the press. I don't know what it is about the sports media during the time in which he played. So, like here in America, we have really good sports reporting in the 1910s and 1920s and 1930s, compared to Great Britain, and it's almost non-existent. There's not really much there to really sink your teeth into and find out who these players are. And that I don't know. That's kind of a problem if you're trying to research some of these cricket players were soccer stars of the early 1900s and 1910s, 1920s, 30s, and 40s. It gets a little bit better in the 1950s, but not by much. So there's a lot to be desired there. So today, what I would thought I would do is share with you his career, mostly through the Football Hall of Fame. They have a pretty good write up, and there's another write up that's pretty recent as well, including his obituary as well. And I didn't know this, but Billy Meredith, he's called the Welsh Wizard, and he's one of the greatest soccer stars of his era, or really any era, which contributes to why he's so expensive. But I think you're going to find this really interesting, as I did. And here we go. This is the bio from National Football Museum. Veteran winger Billy Meredith played for both major Manchester clubs in a long career featuring moments of brilliance and controversy. The determined and outspoken Welshman was to have a lasting impact on the game in his advocacy for player power, contributing to the creation of what is now the Professional Footballers Association. Initially, he played for City, joining in 1894, helping them to two second division championships in 1899 and 1903, and one FA Cup in 1904. In the 1898-99 season, Meredith scored 29 goals, including four hat tricks. The ruthless combination of Meredith and Billy Gillespie helped City climb to promotion. In 1903-1904, City finished second in the First Division and beat Bolton Wanderers in the Football Association Cup final, the only goal being scored by Billy Meredith. In the end of Meredith's time with the club, however, it was marred in controversy. Accused of attempted bribery by Aston Villa captain Alex Leake, Meredith was fined and suspended by the Football Association. The charge resulted in further investigations into the city's finances. The city was found guilty of paying extra for their players. In total, 17 players were suspended. In 1906, alongside three others embroiled in the scandal, Meredith was signed by Manchester United after being sold at auction. The first decade of the 20th century proved fruitful for Meredith. He won two league championship medals in 1908 and 1911 and the FA Cup in 1909. In 1907, Meredith was also instrumental, winning the Home Nations Cup. Meredith's contribution to the game went far beyond his playing skills. The winger had been affected by the deaths of players throughout his career. Initially involved in the Association Footballers Union, Meredith went on to help form the Players Union in 1907. The union sought better wages for players. The FA banned players from joining the union. Only Manchester United stood firm in their decision to continue the union. The players were consequently suspended by the FA, and Meredith became part of the aptly named Outcasts FC. Eventually, the Players' Union was recognized by the Football Association. On the pitch, Meredith continued to deliver the goods. The winger was known for his skill and trickery. His runs and precise crosses mark him as one of the greats of the game. He took the honor of becoming Manchester United's oldest player when turning out against Derby County aged 46. In a final twist to his playing story, Meredith returned to Manchester City in 1921 on a free transfer, turning out at City's Hyde Road ground as well as the then new Main Road in his remaining career. He became City's oldest appearance maker in a 1924 FA Cup semi-final against Newcastle United, aged 49. The original Welsh wizard died at age 83 in 1958, shortly after the Munich air disaster. After he spent many years in an unmarked grave, the PFA, the Welsh FA, Manchester City, and Manchester United all agreed to cover the cost for a new headstone. This is from ManchesterUnited.com. Billy Meredith, football's first superstar, by Malgorzata Amickowicz, May 7, 2021. Billy Meredith is one of the most important names in the long history of Manchester United. Described as the first footballing superstar, he was a vital figure in United's first five trophy triumphs: the Division One titles of 1908 and 1911, the FA Cup of 1909, and the Charity Shields of 1908 and 1911, and also captained rivals Manchester City to their first ever trophy, the 1904 FA Cup. But among his many achievements, he remains our oldest ever player, a record he set 100 years ago to this day when making his final appearance for United at the age of 46 years and 281 days on 7th May 1921. To mark this anniversary and to also welcome the imminent reopening of the Manchester United Museum on 21 May 2021, we look at the life of the Welsh wizard through several artifacts while analyzing what it was like to be a professional footballer in the early 1900s. Teenage miner. Born in a small coal mining village near Chirk, North Wales, Meredith began his working career at age 12, unhooking the tubs at the bottom of the main shaft of the Black Park Colliery. Having shown great football skills while still at school, young Billy joined his local football team as an amateur 4 years later. He continued to play for the side, consisting mainly of his fellow pit workers, until a miners' strike forced the players to withdraw from the league. Eager to follow his passion, he joined Norwich Victoria, where he was soon spotted by one of Manchester City's scouts. Under his mother's influence, who had little regard for football as a profession, Billy remained an amateur and continued to work in the mines for the first 4 years of his playing career. A strong believer that footballers should also have proper jobs, he argued that clubs should allow their players to seek employment outside of football. Wizard. Dubbed the Welsh Wizard for his astonishing wing play and dribbling skills, Meredith is remembered for his staple toothpick, which he chewed while playing to help him concentrate. His winding runs down the wing, coupled with his pinpoint crosses, made him an exceptional talent and one of the most popular footballers of his generation. He continued to delight football supporters with his skills well into his mid-40s due to his strict fitness regime and abstinence from alcohol. Rebel. 2 years after winning the FA Cup with Manchester City in 1904, Billy's career with the Blues was cut short when the FA's investigation into the alleged bribery and match fixing. Billy had to leave City and join United, who happily paid both his £100 fine and his £500 sign-on fee to secure the star player. The club's investment paid off tenfold as the arrival of Meredith, together with three other Blues also embroiled in the scandal, kick-started our first successful era in which two league championships and the FA Cup were won. Union agitator. An avid supporter of the abolition of the maximum wage and the introduction of contractual freedoms, Meredith devoted his life to campaigning for change. Having made his United debut on New Year's Day 1907, Meredith and Charlie Roberts, a fellow Red, continued to fight for footballers' rights, and by the end of the year they chaired the inaugural meeting of the newly re-established Players' Union. To ambush the union's growing popularity, in 1909 the FA instructed football clubs to include a clause in players' contracts forcing them to forfeit their membership or face a playing ban. The measures seem to have worked on almost all but the United players. The newly crowned FA Cup winners, including Meredith, refused to leave the Union and were subsequently banned. Nicknamed the Outcasts FC, the players continued to train at a local sports ground while refusing to conform to the new directive. With only 24 hours left until the season's opening fixture, the FA finally gave in and revoked the players' bans. Despite the continued efforts, the maximum wage legislation remained in place until 1961. Manchester legend. Meredith's charismatic personality and remarkable success at both domestic and international levels elevated him to star player status. At the height of his fame, Billy's popularity was so huge that his benefit match in 1912 attracted a vast crowd of 39,000 spectators. Reformer. While association football still in its infancy, Meredith's coaches were drawn from former athletes like boxers and runners rather than ex-footballers. With no on-the-pitch experience, they placed more focus on skipping, sprinting around the ground, and other forms of gymnastics rather than ball practice. A lifelong campaigner to change the existing training drills, Meredith was appalled by the fact that many professional footballers were even unable to keep up the ball at their feet. Following his retirement from football at the age of 49, Meredith returned to United as a coach and began implementing ball practice into training sessions. Entrepreneur. Keen to capitalize on his huge popularity, Meredith invested in numerous businesses. His entrepreneurial spirit first came to light when he used his £500 sign-on fee to set up a sports outfitters shop opposite the Manchester Town Hall, which later supplied United with kit for the 1909 FA Cup final. Lavished with media attention, Billy continued to secure regular radio appearances and newspaper interviews following his retirement. A guest speaker, a columnist, and pub landlord, an actor and cinema owner were also among the extracurricular activities and ventures he set up to secure his financial future. Unfortunately, despite his star status and numerous investments, Meredith had not managed to shield himself from financial worries of the older age. Despite being one of the most famous and popular players of the Edwardian heyday of Mancunian football, Meredith was close to poverty when he died in 1958. Every time I think of Manchester United, I think of the movie Euro Trip with the soccer hooligans. I know it's kind of funny, but uh, Billy Meredith here seems to have a really great career, and I think that you guys might enjoy trying to collect his cards, or at least get into vintage soccer or football. And with that, guys, let me know what you think about Billy Meredith or trying to collect vintage soccer. And because I'd love to hear what your stories of this are. For me, it's been over the past couple of years trying to figure out both soccer and cricket and who the players are. I think it's really interesting. And it seems to be something that we're seeing a little bit more of in the hobby. And again, I do have my problems with dealers from overseas when they package the stuff. It's incorrect, and somebody should tell them, hey, listen, guys, you got to treat this stuff seriously, and because like it can get damaged real easy when it's shipped here to the states over across the pond, if you will. And it usually I find these cards found in flimsy cardboard. There's really nothing to protect the cards when they're shipped here, but that's a different story, I guess. Or it's connected. I don't know. Maybe you guys could let me know what you think about the shipping processes of other countries, if this is normal. But I have found that collecting cards from Great Britain and Germany and France and across the pond, if you will, to all those countries has been very rewarding, as collecting soccer cards and tennis and boxing and all other sports that are not baseball related. I think it's a great little reprieve and something really to explore. So, anyway, guys, thank you for watching. I greatly appreciate it as always. Let me know what you think about any of this stuff, and I will talk to you later. Have a good one. Bye.